Feel Good Breakfast Show.
Welcome back, beautiful family. This is exactly where you deserve to be as we kick off your day in the right way on S3. And listen, this morning, I told you, yes, we're always all about the celebrations and having a good time. That's still going to come because we also always need to get into very important conversations. And I'm talking about the fact that when we talk about bipolar disorder, it is something that is so complex, often misunderstood, and something that we really want to break down this morning and more than anything understand so that we can hopefully either help ourselves or our loved ones around us. Now, this is something that's characterized by extreme mood shifts or even just energy shifts throughout the day, and it can make life a little bit difficult if left unmanaged. So this is why we had to call in the big guns. I'm talking about Chief Medical Officer at Life Healthcare. It is Carisha Quarry, who is here to let us know how we can hopefully help and support those around us who do have bipolar disorder, or even be able to diagnose ourselves and hopefully seek the attention we might need. So everyone, let's please give her a feel-good welcome. It is Carisha.
Good morning.
Good morning, Carisha. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, and thank you for having me this morning.
Of course. Thank you for coming and having this really important conversation with us. You know, I have a lot of people that I know of who have either discovered that they have bipolar disorder or possibly were, you know, on the brink of it. And this is why this morning I want to ask you, you know, when we talk about bipolar disorder, how do we define it exactly?
So bipolar mood disorders, Anela, is a really important mental health condition that is becoming more and more prominent within our society. Almost 4% of South Africans are estimated to have bipolar mood disorder, and it's especially seen in the entertainment industry because of the extremes of the mood that we have. Yes. So people will present with mania, which is people will really speak really fast, they have flight of ideas, they will have just gregarious behavior, and then that shifts into a depressive state where they really are under the weather, not able to get out of bed, and having really depressive thoughts. And some famous people like Mariah Carey and Demi Lovato have been diagnosed with bipolar mood disorder. So it is a very common medical condition, and the unfortunate thing with bipolar mood disorder is the risk of having a at-risk event, so being being suicidal or being harmful to other people in your environment. So it's very important that we speak about bipolar mood disorder.
Most definitely, and even understand how we can, you know, diagnose it in terms of actually seeking medical help. And can I ask you, can someone be on the brink of bipolar disorder and possibly maybe move themselves away from it, or is it just a black and white situation?
So people may express symptoms of bipolar mood disorder and not actually have an official diagnosis of bipolar mood disorder. It's ideally a diagnosis that's made by a trained medical professional like a psychiatrist. But you can see some signs and symptoms, and there are some risk factors. So the risk factors for bipolar mood disorder is, number one, having a family member that has bipolar mood disorder. So that is generally a parent or a brother or sister or grandparent that has it. Also, when you are facing a real crisis in your life, so either you're changing jobs or you have had a death in your family, or potentially where you are going through a life change like a divorce or some relationship issue that may trigger bipolar mood disorder. And then anybody who is taking alcohol or drugs puts themselves at risk of bipolar mood disorder. So they may display some of the symptoms, but not have the total a spectrum of symptoms that create a diagnosis. And as I've mentioned, some of those symptoms include having a flight of ideas, spending money recklessly, having sexual encounters recklessly, or just going on the opposite end of being really depressed and having at-risk behaviors.
Sure, and this is why it's so important for us to have these conversations, like you said, because sometimes a lot of people see those characteristics either in themselves or someone else, and they just think, you know what, I'm just either going through a phase, or it's just something that is happening in this stage of life, and yet it could be bipolar disorder.
Absolutely. And what's important is that these symptoms actually prevent an individual from performing their daily activities. So people will stop going to work or to school, or they'll start spending money that they don't have, or having relationships that they shouldn't be having, or thinking about suicide, for example. So that's when it starts to become moving from a personality to a disorder, a mental health disorder, when it starts to interfere with your activities of daily living. And that's what's important. That's the difference between it just being your personality to be happy all the time versus it being something that is a condition that needs to be treated by a team of mental health practitioners.
Sure. And Carisha, I feel like you are breaking it down so beautifully, which is why then I want to ask you a little bit of a complex one. When it comes to bipolar disorder, are there different kinds of them, or is it just one that everyone experiences?
Yes, so there are multiple different subtypes of bipolar mood disorder.
Okay.
But what is important is the swing between having mania, which is the high symptoms, versus the depressive symptoms. And it's the swinging between those two extremes with periods of normal behavior in between.
Okay.
So that's important. And when you see that in yourself or in a family member or friend or an employee, then you need to just make sure that that individual is referred to a doctor or a mental health practitioner for assistance.
Okay. Carisha, I'm so glad we're having a part 2 of this because you're really opening my eyes, and I can imagine opening the eyes of the Expresso family as well. And this is why you got to make sure you stay tuned, Expresso fam, because today we are indeed getting to the crux of not just what bipolar disorder is, but also how, in fact, we can help those around us who might be struggling from it and how it actually can be treated, because it is something where you are able to live a very normal life with it as long as you treat it the right way. For now, we're going to jump back to Cape Town, and when we come back, we got so much more. But Mike Graham, are you still feeling good this morning, my lovely?
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. You're on your Feel Good Breakfast Show, indeed, where we are feeling good this morning because we're disseminating information all in the name of understanding bipolar mood disorder a little bit better. This morning, we're joined by Carisha Quarry, who is the Chief Medical Officer at Life Healthcare. And friend, I tell you this much. This is a conversation you want to make sure you do not miss. If you already missed the first part, it's okay. You can catch it up a little bit later, because this morning, we're not leaving without truly understanding how, in fact, we can help those around us and possibly even help ourselves. Carisha, I said earlier on, you have just been breaking this down so beautifully. I think it's so lovely in terms of the nuggets that we're just able to understand from you. But I want to now understand, when we are talking about, lifelong treatment, because earlier on I did say that it is something that is not a life sentence. You're able to live a completely normal life. What are the long-term ways in which we can treat bipolar disorder?
So there are many ways that we can treat bipolar. And yes, it's really important for anybody to understand that you can live a completely normal life with bipolar mood disorder. What's important is education and destigmatization, which means that the people around you, including yourself, should be educated about what bipolar mood disorder is, what the triggers are for the symptoms, and what the symptoms mean. So education is always the first treatment.
Yeah.
And then destigmatization for yourself and your family, as well as in your workplace environment, so that you have the right support from your employer and your colleagues on how to manage the condition and how to accept the condition in the space. It can be very traumatizing for family and for your employer.
Yeah.
Then it is important that you have a team of medical professionals, which include psychiatrists, psychologists, and your general practitioner involved in your care, as well as social workers and occupational health therapists if you're employed and you need assistance in your employment space to make the space conducive to working with bipolar mood disorder. And paramount to all of that is to be compliant to your treatment. So if you are prescribed medication, it is important that you take it as is prescribed by your doctor, and you don't wait until your medication has run out. And you also don't try to experiment with your health. You must take it according to how your medical practitioner prescribes it. And unfortunately, it is medication that you will have to take long term for the rest of your life. But compliance is important so that you can have a healthy, normal life.
I love that. And I also think, like you said, the destigmatization, it's so important, because I don't think a lot of people like to go to work and say, hey, this is something that I actually have or that I'm struggling with.
Yes.
So that's incredible that that you're letting us in on how we can actually. It's okay for us to go to work and say that, and us to receive that sort of structure and I think even support that we might need. But let's jump into this, because, when we talk about individuals that have bipolar mood disorder, how can they manage their symptoms effectively, particularly?
So management of symptoms is firstly, be aware of what those symptoms actually are. As I've mentioned, if a person is experiencing a flight of ideas, if they are struggling to concentrate, if they are struggling to articulate or say what they mean, then that is a sign that they may be, as you say, at risk of going into a manic or depressive episode, or if they're struggling to get out of bed or having suicidal thoughts. What is important about managing your symptoms is, like I said, taking your treatment, eating healthy food, exercising, and talking to the people in your support structure, whether that's your family or your psychologist. And that is how an individual can actually manage their symptoms in the short and in the long term.
Sure. And when we talk about, Doc, just us now looking at the fact that, yes, you're able to manage bipolar mood disorder, what happens when someone doesn't? What are the risks and complications that can happen, almost in terms of, even the cases that you've seen before?
Yes. Unfortunately, the risks can be quite extreme. And a person who has bipolar mood disorder, whether they are on the manic side or on the extreme side, they may develop an at-risk trigger. And that means that they are either at risk of harming themselves by suicide or harming others, that's homicide. They may also be at risk of taking bad financial decisions like gambling, selling their house, etc., making bad decisions regarding sexual behavior and contracting a sexually transmitted infection, or making bad decisions relating to work, so not pitching up for work, for example, and losing their support system and their financial structure. So these are the at-risk behaviors that can result in a very poor outcome for somebody who has bipolar mood disorder. So we can see, and that obviously impacts the individual, the family, and the economy. So it's really important that we manage these conditions as best as we possibly can, and that as a society that we support our friends and family that have bipolar mood disorder.
And speaking of that, how can we support our friends and family that might have it, especially even when we now see that someone is showing symptoms of possibly having bipolar mood disorder and you're not sure? How can we best get them help and how can we support them?
The most effective way is to have an understanding of the condition and to not stigmatize an individual for having a mental health condition. And then to provide them with necessary resources, so a doctor, a toll-free line like the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, and refer them to somebody who can manage, and especially in the workplace environment, many employers have employee wellness programs that can assist people in making the diagnosis. So it's important that as a friend or family member that you help and you refer your relative or friend to the necessary resources.
Incredible. And of course, the necessary resources are the likes of Life Healthcare.
Yes, that includes us.
Yes, I love that. Carisha, you've made this so easy to understand. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and chat to us. And well done on the great work that you guys are doing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It is Carisha Quarry, the Chief Medical Officer of Life Healthcare. And my friend, today I told you we were going to be learning. And that is why we continue learning always, always, always. This is why I need to give you this specific email address, or not even an email, a website, www.lifehealthcare.co.za. That is where you can go to when you possibly want to find out a little bit more about bipolar mood disorder. Maybe you've seen a few symptoms in someone that you love or even in yourself, and you want to hear and gain knowledge in terms of what exactly you need to know about it. It is lifehealthcare.co.za. And here's to us having a little bit of an easier time when it comes to our mental health, because you know how much we're all about that right here on your Feel Good Breakfast show. For now, I want us to jump on over to Cape Town, because Cape Teasy Fo Sheezy, what is still to come today on our menu when we talk about feeling good, huh?